Hello everyone, Adrienne here. So today we're going to be doing something really fun. I have been kind of sitting on doing this kind of review for a while. It's been a hot minute since last I have reviewed a vintage absinthe, and I still do have a couple in my collection that I would love to share with you via a review. Things have been really hectic and busy with work lately, so I've just been having a hard time finding the time and the energy to devote to the reviews in a way that does them justice. We're going to do something fun. You may notice I do have a Jade bottle sitting here, but you may not notice, just barely out of frame, is this little sample size over here. This is vintage Oxygénée absinthe from 1910. This was very generously sent to me by Brian Robinson from the Wormwood Society. So Brian, if you're watching, thank you so much. Appreciate it. You're the best. So the reason why the Jade bottle is here is because I was kind of inspired by my really fun National Absinthe Day live stream last year with Dr. Justin Sledge of Esoterica. If you haven't seen his channel yet, please, by all means, go check it out because he's amazing. If you guys know about like the original Dark Shadows series, he's literally like a real life Professor Stokes. He's amazing. I love him. What I'm going to be doing is a side-by-side comparison of the original Pre-Ban and the modern inspired, I guess, recreation. So I did run this idea by my friend Ted Breaux, who obviously made Jade Terminus Oxygénée, and he wanted me to kind of disclose a couple of things to you guys before we actually get into the review itself. So he wanted me to make these two things known to you guys before we get into this comparison. So the herb bill is the same with one key exception. So pretty much all of the ingredients and the herbs used to make the original Oxygénée 1910 is similar except for one exception. And then he said the herbs that are the same used for the original, not necessarily in the same amounts, although the proportions are likely similar. So may not be in the same exact amounts depending on how this was distilled over 100 years ago, but they are going to be very, very similar. And then another similarity is that the Jade was oxygenated just like this was oxygenated back in the day. So essentially oxygenation became a trend toward the end of the Pre-Ban era, and this was in opposition to the bad, adulterated, toxic knockoffs of absinthe that were being sold in France and maybe a couple of other places. So when the toxic, adulterated absinthes were coming out onto the market, the good, reputable brands decided to be like, okay, we're going to take an extra step to convince our customers and let our customers know that we're fine, we're okay, it's these bad brands that are the problem. So they added this oxygenation process, which was supposed to rid the absinthe of any impurities and to make it extra healthy to drink, as if you're drinking more oxygen than you would typically breathe. It's kind of a funny idea, but that was their logic at the time. And Ted says that the oxygenation process does add a different characteristic to it, so I'm really interested to compare the two. And also, for the reason of full disclosure, I did want to say that this is not my absolute first taste of this product. I did have a little tasting of the oxygenated absinthe from 1910 with my friend Mark Ciano. Had an absinthe tasting with him a couple years ago, and I decided to bring this with me to taste because we when we have an absinthe tasting together, we taste several different kinds. And this was his first taste of vintage absinthe, and I was absolutely so thrilled to be there for his first taste of vintage absinthe because that's not necessarily something that everyone can experience. So I felt really special to experience that with him. So yeah, this is not my first time tasting this product. So I'm going to try and leave maybe a little bit of a sliver of this. If I had to guess, this was probably like an ounce, maybe an ounce and a half just by eyeballing it, and maybe I'll leave a little sliver behind. We'll see. The thing is with vintage spirits is, in my personal opinion, some of it should be preserved. Those who have it should definitely protect it as much as they can. But also, if you do have the opportunity to drink it, enjoy it, and share your experience about it, you should definitely do it. And obviously, I would rather this be in my possession than the possession of someone who thinks that they're going to trip balls off of this, you know, potentially set it on fire. Can you imagine someone discovering a vintage absinthe and setting it on fire? Oh my god, I would rage. So for the sake of time constraints, and so this video doesn't get too terribly long, I am going to be louching and preparing the Terminus Oxygénée, the Jade version of it, off camera, so that this video isn't like an hour long. I'd really like for this video to not be an hour long. But we are definitely going to focus on what the louche looks like for the Pre-Ban Oxygénée right here. All right, so we're going to reposition the camera and we're going to pour ourselves a glass of the Oxygénée from 1910. I'm so excited. I'm so glad I'm finally doing this. I've been putting this off for so long, but I'm finally doing this. And just so that's easy to distinguish between the two, I'm going to have the Jade Terminus Oxygénée in this glass right here, a very obviously modern glass. And then I'm going to have the vintage Oxygénée in this glass right here. Alrighty, let's do this. All right, everyone, now is the time for the evaluation of the Pre-Ban Oxygenated Absinthe from 1910. I am really excited. So I'm going to give it a good pour. Yep, that's the end of it. Oh my god. Okay, no joke. If you were to put this in front of my nose and tell me this was a modern absinthe, I would totally believe you, but as long as it's one that was a good quality. So I will say the color is obviously not as brilliant as it once was, but again, consider this is over 100 years old. This is like 114 years old. So obviously it is not going to maintain its same brilliance of color that it had over 100 years ago. But I'm really pleased by how pretty it is, and it's not like a feuille morte kind of color or dead leaf color as you typically would see with a Pre-Ban absinthe. And just so you guys can see like exactly what color, like how this color is looking, here is some white paper behind it. So it's a very light color. I can imagine closer to when this was created, it was just an absolutely gorgeous, deep peridot green color. But this is still nice. You can tell from what we see here that this is not artificially colored. So color, I'm obviously going to give it 4.5 stars. It's beautiful and traditional. It's not quite as brilliant as a modern absinthe, obviously, but that's okay. All right, now we're going to do the process of the louche and see what happens, and I've made sure that my fountain is as cold as humanly possible. Okay, we're starting to see the cloud. There it is. There it is. It's definitely a slow-forming louche, which happens sometimes with high-quality absinthes, but not very often. You can still see the oils coming out. Really beautiful. And I noticed that this is definitely more blue than it is green as the cloud is forming here. And I personally think that is a really good indication that this has quite a bit of wormwood in it. Okay, I'm going to stop it right there because I definitely don't want to overwater it. Now, one thing I noticed during my tasting of this with my friend Mark is that the louche was surprisingly weak, and I'm not sure if that is just because of the breakdown of the chlorophyll also kind of affecting the anethol that was present. That's my best theory as to why the louche is not as intense as other Pre-Ban absinthes that I've had, or maybe there was just a little bit of sun damage, and maybe that's why it's such a pale green in comparison to other Pre-Ban Absinthes I've had. But yeah, the louche is obviously weak, but I think it's a matter of age, not necessarily quality. So for louche, I'm going to go ahead and give it about maybe 2.5 stars. Like I said, I think it's possible that the anethol in this particular absinthe has broken down, and maybe that's why it's not as intense of a louche. Because I can assure you, my fountain is absolutely chock full of water, like really, really cold ice water right now. So the temperature of the water is not the problem. Alrighty, so I'm going to reposition the camera and we're going to give this a taste. Alright everyone, so now we're going to evaluate our Pre-Ban Absinthe. So, again, this is from 1910, and also I'm not necessarily sure what the alcohol content on this is. I'm going to guess, just from my understanding of the alcohol content of a lot of absinthes back in the Pre-Ban era, I think it's safe to say this was probably around 68% at the time that it was released. And it's possible that some of the alcohol content may have reduced over time. We'll see. So, let's go ahead and evaluate the nose of it. Mon Dieu. Few things smell better than a Pre-Ban Absinthe. Oh my god. It's so floral and so strong on the anise. And I have said this in a previous video where I have reviewed a Pre-Ban Absinthe where it seems that the anise flavor and the fennel flavors were a little bit more pronounced than some of the absinthes that are out there on the market today. And I think it's because some distillers are just like, oh, well, anise is kind of a controversial flavor out there. Maybe people aren't going to like this if it's too intense on the anise. But they say that they're trying to abide by tradition, and tradition says that it's supposed to be pronounced on the anise. So floral and earthy, and there's a little bit of kind of like a honeysuckle kind of note happening here. The aroma is just magical. So for aroma, I'm going to give that 5 stars because, again, it's really hard to put too much criticism on something that's over 100 years old. Alright, so now we're going to take a taste of it, and as always, everyone, santé, and please drink responsibly. Also, not gonna lie, I kind of like how this matches my robe. This was totally by accident, by the way. Alright, let's do this. Ooh. Oh, wow. Yeah, the honeysuckle note is definitely coming through a lot more now. Oh man, that's so nice. I will say, it's been a while since I've had a Jade Terminus Oxygénée, but this is definitely a little sweeter than the Jade Terminus Oxygénée, and I think it may have something to do with the very secret ingredient that Ted puts into his Jade Terminus Oxygénée. He says that I could definitely taste it because he watched my review of it and he said it was spot on. And he said that he could tell that I was tasting the secret ingredient in question. But the thing is, I may have been able to identify it, but that doesn't mean I know what it is. Like, I was able to describe the flavor of it, but I wouldn't be able to tell you exactly what botanical it was. But when I had dinner with Ted last year, he did say, oh yes, there's a secret ingredient in the Jade Terminus Oxygénée that I have a guy in Italy growing for me, and it's part of the Artemisia species, but I'm not going to tell you what it is. You've tasted it, but I'm not going to tell you what it is. So it kind of feels like a dirty little secret to me, which I think is awesome. Alrighty, so flavor, I'm going to give that 5 stars. That's amazing. Yes, it may have had a weak louche, but again, I'm going to attribute that to the potential breakdown of anethol during the last 100 years that this was stored away, because obviously nothing lasts forever, and that's kind of why you have to enjoy it while you can. So yes, the flavor is absolutely gorgeous. I still can't believe that this is over 100 years old. It's wild. It's surprisingly light. It's possible that it's a little lighter than other absinthes I've had because it has the 100 years on it. And the alcohol content has probably gone down over time. It has evaporated, but it's still lovely. It's amazing. I'm so happy. And the mouthfeel is surprisingly substantive in that it's really silky. Like I can really feel it like slithering around in my mouth. Oh my god, that sounded so dirty. I'm so sorry. But it lingers and it hangs out for a while before it disappears. It's so good. So yeah, mouthfeel, definitely 5 stars. If I had to guess about the base for this is probably made with a grape neutral spirit, because I think around this time the vineyards in France bounced back from the phylloxera blight. And it just feels really rich and substantive in a way that I wouldn't necessarily associate with a grain neutral spirit, in my personal opinion. All right, so now we are going to prepare a glass of the Jade Terminus Oxygénée, and we're going to contrast and compare. All right, so now we're going to pour ourselves a glass of Jade Terminus Oxygénée, my favorite absinthe of all time. This is my ride or die. I always keep this in my cabinet. I believe this is my 3rd bottle that I've had. Yeah. Don't judge me, this absinthe is delicious. If you would like to see a more thorough review of the Jade Terminus Oxygénée, I will leave a link for that down below so that you can go check it out. Literally the first time I had it, it brought tears to my eyes because it's just that good. All right, so just going to give you a quick little rundown of how this looks. So it has the beautiful peridot shade right here. It is gorgeous. So yes, that's what it looks like when it is not louched yet. It's gorgeous. I love it. I will insert a little picture of the Pre-Ban Oxygénée so that you can contrast and compare. So here is the Terminus Oxygénée, Ted's version, and as you can see, it's a beautiful, brilliant peridot green. So that's what it looks like. It's a beautiful, deep peridot green. It's gorgeous. I love it. I just cannot get over that color. So it's probably a safe bet to say that this is what the Pre-Ban Oxygénée looked like over 100 years ago. All right, so I have louched my glass of Jade Terminus Oxygénée, and as you can see, this is definitely a dummy thick with 2 C's louche over here. And yeah, so you see the beautiful tones of, you know, yellow and green and gold, and there's just a slight hint. There's a little blue ring around the glass that you can see when you look at the glass from a bird's eye view, and this is basically what proves that there is wormwood present. So when you compare it to the Pre-Ban Oxygénée, you can see that it's definitely, I don't want to say sad, but diminished kind of louche. And again, it's hard for me to say whether this is a result of the breakdown of botanical content, specifically anethol, that is making the louche not quite as dummy thick as this, but I can imagine when it was at the height of its popularity, when it was first released, that it had a beautiful, very thick louche, because again, all, I want to say 3 of the vintage absinthes that I have, one of which was made before the ban, and the other ones that I've had were made after the ban, but in Spain. So they're still genuine absinthe. I don't want to hear any nonsense saying, oh, well, it's not the real stuff. Shut the fuck up, okay? Anyway, it was made pretty much exactly the same when it moved from France to Spain. So the only difference that I can imagine between like French pre-ban absinthe and Spanish post-ban absinthe is that the anise is going to be more intense because it's coming more fresh from Spain than it is when absinthe is made in France. Alrighty, so let's go ahead and compare the... Oh god, I just cannot get enough of that. That's so good. And then I'm going to go ahead and smell the Pre-Ban Oxygénée again. This is kind of wild, but they smell almost exactly the same. The only difference is that the Pre-Ban Oxygénée has that honeysuckle-like note that's kind of lingering in there, whereas the Terminus Oxygénée has a little bit more spice to it. It's entirely possible it could be because of the botanical difference that Ted told me about, or it could be potentially due to the age that is on the Pre-Ban Oxygénée. So it could be either one of those factors that is contributing to the difference in taste and smell. That's just my opinion. All right, so we're going to take a little taste of this. Oh, that never gets old. That is so nice. So, I can taste a very clear difference between these two. This definitely has a lot more intense of a flavor. I'm guessing because it doesn't have diminished alcohol content and because the botanicals have not diminished in as significant of a way as what happens after 100 years. But they taste so similar. This one has a little bit of like a nettly earthiness happening with it, whereas this one has a bit of a softer note that's rounding off the edge. Let me just grab some water to cleanse my palate and I'll taste this one again. Alright, so we're going to go in for another taste of the Pre-Ban. Yeah. It's definitely softer, sweeter, has that honeysuckle, flavor just hanging on. And I would say that the mouthfeel for this one feels silkier. The mouthfeel here, it's kind of weird, but I do want to say that it feels kind of like silky and vaporous. I don't know if that makes sense. It kind of reminds me of like the mist rolling in over the ocean. So if you could visualize like how that would taste on your tongue and feel in your mouth, like that's what that reminds me of. But it has that silky, lingering effect that I really love. This one, the Jade Terminus Oxygénée, I would say has a little bit more of a velvety mouthfeel. Is it still soft and luxurious and I want to wrap my entire body in it? Absolutely. It's just different fabrics, different textures. Like that's kind of how I would describe it. But both are amazing. You can definitely tell that Ted paid a lot of attention to detail. He tried as hard as he could to get the botanicals. And again, he said that he didn't want to make an exact copy, which I can totally understand because that shit's hard. But I can definitely appreciate like how much effort and love and devotion went into making his absinthe products. So yeah, I will say the same thing that I said in my tasting with Dr. Justin Sledge. This is the resurrection of what this was 100 years ago. And Ted is one of the only producers that is doing this with absinthe and representing Pre-Ban Absinthe in the modern age. So everyone, thank you so much for watching. This was a really awesome video to make. I'm definitely going to take some pictures now that we have both absinthes to compare. I want to share this experience with everyone because not everyone gets to experience drinking Pre-Ban Absinthe. Here's my advice. If ever you get the opportunity to try any kind of vintage spirit or wine or anything like that, if the opportunity is presented to you, take it. It is one of those experiences that you will only come across like maybe once or twice in a lifetime. I thankfully am in a very fortunate position where a lot of experts and absinthe enthusiasts in the absinthe community have been generous enough to send me samples of Pre-Ban Absinthe to enjoy. And I have a way to share that experience with all of you so that you can get an idea of what Pre-Ban Absinthe was like. So again, guys, this is why I get so upset when people insist that absinthe back in the Pre-Ban era was hallucinogenic, toxic, dangerous. It's because it wasn't. In this video, I really want to make it obvious that this was the experience back then. As you can clearly see in this video, I am not tripping balls, I'm not hallucinating, I'm not getting high. This is what it was like 100 years ago. Over 100 years ago, really. Absinthe is so special and it's so sacred to me, so whenever I see someone trying to deliberately mischaracterize it and turn it into something that it absolutely isn't, wasn't, and will never be, it makes me really upset. Especially when there are so many wonderful, passionate people in the absinthe community who want to share that narrative as well. That absinthe was not dangerous, toxic, hallucinogenic. I'm very clearly perfectly fine here with this glass of absinthe that was made in 1910, before the ban. So anyone who comes up to me and insists, oh yeah, it was dangerous, hallucinogenic, addictive, and toxic, I can look them dead in the eye and say, no, it wasn't. Because I've had now 4 vintage absinthes, and I'm fine. Sorry for that little tangent, guys, but I just get so passionate about this, especially when I have the opportunity to try vintage absinthe and to try pre-ban absinthe that supposedly everyone thinks was dangerous and hallucinogenic. Absolutely not. So thank you for coming to my TED Talk. All right, guys, sorry for that rant, but thank you so much for watching. I really, really appreciate it. If you have any questions about pre-ban absinthe or anything like that, please feel free to drop those questions in the comment section down below. If you have more questions about how to get the Jade Absinthes online or otherwise, I will leave links for Jade Liqueurs in the description as well. Make sure you subscribe for more content about absinthe, the goth subculture, gothic literature, and other fun things that we like to discuss here. And make sure you hit that bell for notifications so that you can be notified every single time I post. And thank you so much to my patrons for your support every single month. I really, really, really appreciate it. It's probably going to be a couple weeks before I post content again, and that is because Kenny and I are going on vacation to France. So you guys are amazing. I love you, and I will see you guys later. Bye.